StoryCon presents BackStory, a podcast featuring writers, readers, and their stories, hosted by best-selling author Jennifer A. Nielsen.
Imagine for a moment that you are staring at yourself in the mirror, studying a face you've spent a lifetime looking at, examining those eyes that reveal everything about who you are. The mirror will reveal a lot of that for you: your height and weight, skin color, hair color, eye color. There are other pieces not reflected, but every bit as much a description of who you are. Religious and political affiliations, your education, the things you know or think you know, even right or left-handedness. All of these pieces combine to make you, you. As a young man in his early 20s, Moses had a firm idea of who he was and what he wanted from the world. Mostly that involved two things. The first was that he wanted to write. The second was to travel, to see the world, but not just from a suitcase jumping from place to place. Moses wanted to experience the world. To him, these plans were easily connected. If he could live abroad and write about it, whether in a blog or a book, then he could achieve both of these great dreams at once. So he found a job teaching English in Thailand. He was assigned to teach in a small town between Bangkok and Cambodia, thousands of miles from his hometown. Culturally, it seemed even farther away than that. This would be Moses's first time outside the United States, with the kind of employment where he felt he could really make a difference. And the experience did make a difference, but probably to Moses more than anyone else. While living in Thailand, Moses's entire world began to expand, and his understanding of perspective expanded with it. Back home in America, in his comparatively sheltered life, that identity he'd built for himself had seemed so obvious. He'd had one story about his life, one picture of who he was. But now, that was changing. While of average height in America, in Thailand, Moses stood taller than most others around him. In America, being a black man carried certain meanings for him. Though his skin was closer to the coloring of most people now living around him, being a black man in Thailand, more specifically a Nigerian-American black man, carried different meanings. The same was true of his education, his clothing, the very culture in which he had always lived. All of that was different now, and those differences changed him, but in a way he had not expected. Moses was the same person he'd always been, curious and adventurous and eager to learn, and yet he was a different person too, not because he'd adopted new traits, but because his old traits now carried different meanings. That was the change Moses absorbed into his identity, the concept of perspective. We look in the mirror and see the person staring back at us. What we tell ourselves about what we see is a matter of our own perspective. This way of thinking defines so much of our behaviors and attitudes. Maybe you have told yourself only one story throughout your life: that you are smart or not, capable or not, talented or not, and maybe never questioned your story because you've never allowed any other perspective to break through. The same is true when we look at others. You remember that dress in 2015 that was shared from one social media account to the next. Was it white or gold, or blue and black? For that matter, is your understanding of blue the same as my understanding of blue? Don't spend too much time on that. It will break your brain. But what we can spend time on and should spend time on is something that we all know, but often fail to understand, which is that there is more than one way to view the world, more than one way to think about an idea or to look at another person. And these variations of thought aren't right or wrong, nearly as often as they are simply different. That's the reason why the world needs more stories, more ideas, more viewpoints. And that is what Moses Ose Utomi came to understand in Thailand. These understandings still influence his writing today as he seeks to fill the worlds in his books with new perspectives of character, of place, of history, and in that way to challenge us to think about who we really are, so that the next time you look in the mirror, you might pause and ask yourself who is really staring back at you.
Thank you for listening to BackStory. If you'd like to enjoy more episodes, visit us at storycon.org/backstory. That's StoryCon.org/backstory.